Hi everyone, I'm Josh. Welcome today to my mid-year freakout tag for 2025. Hey, some things are constant. The mid-year freakout tag are one of those constants. No matter how many videos I make in a year, I will never miss out on this if I can help it. And so far I have it. This is my 5th mid-year freakout tag. Is that right? 2020? Fuck, it's my 6th. Shit. I'm in my 6th year, so I just finished my 5th year. I haven't done anything for it. Maybe I will, but that's not what we're here for, because right now we're here focusing on how the year's going so far. I've moved again. My reading is directly linked to my cycling. It's living somewhere where the weather is complete shit. Even in the spring here, it's just so muggy all the time. I haven't biked as much as I have in past years, which means my reading is down as well. It all overlaps with my sort of mental state of having to adapt to a new location again, meeting new people. Even 6 months in, it's still tough. And it's reflected in the fact that I've only read 32 books. That's good. Obviously, I don't mean to say that's a bad thing somehow. It's merely a reflection of how my lifestyle adapts in terms of how it all feeds into what I'm reading. I also just feel like I've not been enjoying what I've been reading as much, which that's part of it, is feeling very sluggish, not feeling as motivated. It's part of it, of course, is just going out, having a routine of cycling. The other part is being engaged in what I'm reading, in a sense, in a way that motivates me to continue cycling, or rather continue reading, which would then in turn motivate me to do things like going out, cycling, doing things that I normally do when I read or listen to an audiobook. I don't have my ratings here. I don't think there's more than a few 5 stars or 4.5s. I have soft DNF'd 5 books so far. Several of those are tentative, like pause for nows. Like I said, my mindset's been all over the place, so I'm letting myself stop a book if I feel like I'm not vibing with it, because sometimes a book I might actually enjoy if I'm in a different headspace where I'm just more open to it or can just respond to it better. But if I try to push through it, I'm just gonna dislike it and not even have a good reason for it, just not have gotten into the story, never got invested, and by the time I finished writing the review, I will have forgotten everything about the book. I don't have ratings or pages. I did not prepare for that. I don't know why I didn't, but let's just get straight into the questions for the mid-year freakout tag. So the best book or books that I've read so far this year, probably the best one is still I Who Have Never Known Men, or even Strangers in Their Own Land to a lesser extent, as well as The Reformatory by Tanner Adu. But all of those were in my most recent video where I talk about reading BookTuber's favorite books, which I guess is a good reflection of that project and of BookTubers in general, at least the ones that I follow, and my ability to assess whether I can trust that their assessment is reflective of how I feel as well, if that makes sense, because of the fact that so many of my favorite books were from that project. I'll give you one extra book that I've read outside of there that I think sort of is on the same level as which is going to be Little Fish by Casey Plett. She is a trans-Canadian author who wrote this book on basically the experience of the trans friends or trans woman with a bunch of trans friends in Canada. And it's one of those books that just feels like a snapshot, a moment in time in someone's life where there is pain and there is hardship. But to me, what really shone through was that sense of finding hope and community, even when everything feels against you sometimes. And there's just such beauty in the writing and the story and the characters that made it so easy to get into it. I absolutely adored it. Easy 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more by her, but I'll save that for a favorite author when we get to that question. Spoilers, I guess. Next up, best sequel, and I've not read many sequels, only one, which is going to be The Martian by Mary Robinette Kowal. And while I can't say this is necessarily my favorite book of the series, or even one of the best books I've read this year, I do want to take this opportunity to talk about the series that I've loved so much since my time on BookTube, honestly, the last half a decade. I'm a planetary scientist, I study space, and the idea of this series of finding hope, especially in these dark times, is motivating and is enjoyable to read, and to get that sense of catharsis where you have some realness, but at the end of the day, it's a hopeful story. And I enjoyed seeing it finish, and I love our characters, especially our main character. Although this book is following what I think is arguably the best book in the series, which is book 3, the only one in this 4-book series that followed another character who just happened to be very different than our main character of the entire series, the Lady Astronaut, which is the name of the series as a whole. That, coupled with the fact that I felt like the plotting was just a little lax, meaning that there wasn't as much of a story to tell. It was fine. Mary Robinette Kowal is really good at just creating a compelling story and very likable characters and getting you invested, at least getting me invested. So in that sense, it was an easy, fun read. but at the same time I could recognize this story does it really need to exist? And I hate getting to that point in something that I love, but for what it's worth, it could be much worse. It's not like my feelings on the Middle Game series, where I have very little love in the whole thing, even if the plot itself isn't as well-rounded as a Middle Game. That's not quite the same thing. I think there's more going on here. I don't think she's losing her touch, per se, which is, I guess, kind of an insult to Shauna McGuire, but I just think that if she's going to continue the series, which I don't think she is, maybe I don't know what her plans are, just could use a bit more well-rounding. But still, one of my favorite series of all time, honestly. I enjoyed getting to see this new book, which was supposed to be out in 2023, and the last one came out in 2020, so this is legit wait. That means I read it before 2020. Yeah, the first time I read it was probably 2019. I think about it, but still. The point is that I've been waiting a long time for this book. Can't believe it's been 5 years. I didn't realize I waited that long. Okay, favorite reread. And for this, it's gonna objectively be Another Country by James Baldwin, which I talked about again in my last video. This is almost like Casey Plett's story. It's all about the characters and focusing on them and the way we're able to sort of, the story fleshes out those characters and just really getting to know them in a good way. And this is even different than I say Little Fish, where this has such a diverse cast of characters, and the ability to make characters that feel so real is just phenomenal. When I'm up to this, just so I can make something new, would be Parable of the Talents, book 2 of the Parable Solo series. I think that was the third time I read it. And objectively, I love that book more than Another Country, but for very different reasons. But because this is my first reread of Another Country, I think from an overall perspective, it definitely takes the cake as the best of the best. And you know what? Why don't I mention my least favorite, All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. This was one I read maybe 2018 or so. I gave it a 4-star at the time. My memory of it, this mix of science and magic, was much fonder, and I think I blew it up in my mind, sort of embellished it in my mind, because when I finally got back to it, I just couldn't get into it. I felt like the story was just meh, the characters weren't that compelling, and this love that I thought I was going to have, I thought for sure it was going to go from a 4-star to a 5-star, but it wasn't that kind of a read, unfortunately, and I've actually gone down to a 3-star, and I just hate I didn't love this more, because now it makes me question whether or not I really like Charlie Jane Anders, which I do. I love her short fiction, but I'm just so devastated by not loving this, or actively liking it less than my first time. Next up, we have new releases that I haven't read yet, but have came out. In these next two questions, the most anticipated new releases are, to me, confuse myself. I confuse myself because it seems like the same thing, basically, but new releases I haven't read yet is how I'm going to. Stag Dance by Tori Peters, who wrote Transition Baby, a book that I loved when it came out a few years ago. And honestly, I thought I was going to read this in Pride Month, which I did not, just by circumstance, but I have no doubt I'm going to read it this year. It's one of the most anticipated books of the year, and it's been out since March, and I also have an arc I need to read. So that's probably the highest one. I'm just going to put a few others. Empire of AI by Karen Ho, a book about AI, the rise of AI, and I think a book behind the scenes of OpenAI. And I think it's very prescient, so I imagine I'm going to end up reading it, although I'm not going to make a 100% commitment on this one. It seems like an intriguing book, just whether or not my interests align properly. Other ones being Trans Rad Femme by Talia Bhatt, a book about the trans experience. I don't know much about it other than what the title implies, and it's one that I heard from a YouTuber who I follow and whose opinion I trust very much. It's not on audio, so if I don't get to it right away, it's definitely for that reason, but I'm going to try to read it this year because it was so highly praised. And the last one I'll also mention is just a new one that I hadn't heard of and would like to read, which is The Expert of Subtle Revisions by Kristen Minger Anderson. And this is just a time travel book. The cover is very intriguing because it's very basic. Because I've been in a bit of a meh this year and not really vibing with a lot of books, I am trying to gravitate to genres and themes that I think will just be easier for me to get into. This has very much been a year of embracing the things that I love most rather than trying to challenge myself too much for that reason. And this is one of those where I think it's a little challenging because it's giving literary, but it's time travel, and time travel is still one of my favorite things of all time. Is that a pun? I don't know if it's a pun, but okay, now let's continue. My most anticipated release that hasn't released yet. Lessons in Magic and Disaster by Charlie Jane Anderson is one that was on my list, and it's still anticipated, but after having such a bad experience with that last book, I honestly don't know how I'm going to get to it anymore. She hasn't had an adult book in a while. She's been doing a lot of YA, but this is an adult magic book. Maybe a Magic School, I don't quite remember, but I do love magic. I would like to give it a shot. I'm worried that no longer might be an anticipated release, at least not one that I'm going to jump on when it comes out in August. Other one, Black Flame by Gretchen Felker Martin, and it comes out in August. I've read her second book. It was a Cuckoo. I thought it was great, very compelling read, and great themes. a little janky in its structure of jumping forward in time at one point. But I absolutely adored it, and I've already gotten granted the ARC for this. I'm going to be reading it this year for sure. And then finally, one that I haven't heard of, but that the name and vibe is just really bringing it, which is The Macabre by Kosoko Jackson. It comes out in September. An adult queer horror story, a standalone novel blending art, history, time, and global hopping adventure. It's a debut novel by Kosoko Jackson, and I am so excited for more queer horror. And I'm telling you, this title and this cover is just everything I need to get me interested, so I feel pretty certain I'm going to read it. Okay, the biggest disappointment. I'm going to name, Oliver's in the Sky, obviously, for the reasons I already stated. Other than that, I'll say Wind and Truth, a book that I'm about to start picking up again. But I read it, I got the audio arc for the first chunk of it, and then I kept reading part of it, and then I just, after about 25%, I think it was, or was it 40%? I think it was 40%. I just thought to myself, this is so long, so dragged out, and it's not bad, it's just not compelling enough to keep me interested. I want to at least finish this section of the series. My plan has been after Pride Month to pick back into it. I also want to read more lone books this for the rest of the year. I want to revisit it, but I won't lie, but so there's been disappointment that I didn't find myself getting just, really into it. I've only felt that some of the time, like the reread of the first book, and I guess the second book too, but for the third and the fourth one, it's just not, the point is that it's been more of a chore than I was hoping it would be. And lastly, I'll say The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell, a religious sci-fi story. It was fine. Maybe part of it was the headspace, my first thing that I read this year, but the biggest reason I'm listing this as a biggest disappointment is because of the fact that it was my first read. It's always so disappointing when the first book is just meh, and that's what this was. So it was not a great start to the year, but maybe it was a good foreshadowing of what was to come. Next up, we have Biggest Surprise, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. I will already say that because while I did trust to an extent the people I was listening to, it's one of those books where I'd never heard anything about it. It's become pretty popular the last year or so. So I'm not necessarily on a hidden gem here, but the fact that I found myself so easily getting into the idea of it, the concept, and just the writing is one of those beautiful surprises that I love. Coming across a book that had not been on my TBR basically at all, suddenly loving it. And next I'll also mention a new one, well it's not new actually, another one from that video. I'll say Shards of Honor by Louis McMaster Bujold, the first in the series of whatever this series is called, that I took the recommendation from Angela's Literary Science Alliance. I was just surprised, I think, because of this old sci-fi epic. It's epic, but still, it's the type of genre that isn't always something I'm quick to get into. And even as I read it, it was fine at first, and then I found myself suddenly thinking, this is kind of surprising. This feels more unique than I was expecting, and it was just one of those books that actively surprised me as I read it. It wasn't just when I picked it up; it was in the middle of the story, finding my opinion just shift suddenly, and now that is a pleasant surprise, and I love that. Favorite new author? I've already alluded to this. It's going to be Casey Platt. And I wouldn't say major favorite in the sense that I've only read one of her works, and I feel like I need to read more to really know for sure. But of all the books that I've read that are new to me, she has to be the one that I think most stands out as an author who I'm really excited to continue. Continue on with her book, Little Fish. We have books with favorite characters, or perhaps a non-fictional inspirational character. So this is me reworking one of the questions about my favorite character. And I'm not good at remembering characters, even in books that I love. So I want to instead focus on a collection of characters, or perhaps figures, if it's a nonfiction book, to highlight that I found really stuck out to me. And of course, for this, it is Little Fish. This cast of characters, and of course the main character that I found just very, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but I just really connected to them. I felt like they were very real, and I just really enjoyed about having that snapshot of their life shown to me. Another runner-up for a new book to suggest or to talk about would be All the Hearts You Eat by Haley Piper. What is not my favorite at first, but it was a solid 4.25 star book that I really enjoyed, and it's basically a vampire story about vampires in a small town. But it kind of gave Salem Lots vibes in a lot of ways, but I'd say primarily it's just the friend groups that are here that we're following, the main friend group that I found very likable to a lesser extent. It's hard to find a book that has writing and characters that resonate as strongly as a book like Little Fish. It's one of those books that is uplifted because of that connection that I felt with the characters that I was reading. And that's why while I say All the Hearts You Can Read, All the Hearts you Can Eat is up there, it's just definitely a different league in that sense. Next up, we have books that made you sad, because I don't usually cry when I read a book. So for this, I want to talk about The Wall by Marlene Harshover. She's a German writer, and I think I heard about this book on TikTok, no less. One of those stupid TikToks where you have AI voice generators narrating the plot summary of a fucking book. And while it's insufferable, it was an intriguing premise. So I looked it up. It was this old classic dystopian book that's very similar to The Dome by Stephen King, where you get this person isolated in a small area. They can't leave this wall. And it's very much about isolation, but also, so because of that, it's like a survivalist story and about dealing with isolation and some of the freedom that comes with that isolation. The freedom from the social expectations, the societal expectations of this woman, this older woman at that, and what she has to do to survive, or what she's expected to do versus what she can do now that she has no other external pressures forcing her to do this, besides, of course, just basic survival. And it's sad because of the isolation and because of the few connections she's able to make inside of the dome, or it's not a dome, it's just my way I think about it, and the struggles she has to go through in that sense. I will say that if you like the speculative concept, it's not about that. That was the biggest disappointment I had of this book, which is I was hoping for more speculative fun, but it's very much the setup of the story, and then it's all about the character dynamics, or the dynamics of once this thing's set up. Then forget about the speculative aspect. That's just the foundation, nothing more, which is fine. It's a choice, not even a bad choice. It's just not so. I think that would have given it. I think I would have just given it a higher rating, like a really high up 5-star, if it had satisfied that need from me. A book that made you happy. And for this, I wanted specifically to mention one that was new, that I haven't talked about, which, again, it's a solid 4 stars, so it's not a great selection of books to highlight, but When We Were Magic by Sarah Gailey. Again, it's like a Damn Me With Faint Praise, is what it's called. I enjoyed this. It's like The Craft, but like a more positive spin. It felt like there were toxic things, there were some things that were going on, but it was in this friends group that was not inherently toxic. There was a good social dynamic among them and among the people that, I guess, they're guardians. And there was a positive, happy sense behind that there was a path forward and not just a path of self-destruction. It was a bit of a surprise in that sense. I wasn't knowing what to expect, and I did hope it would go darker. It did not. That might be why it's just like a soft or just a hard 4 stars for me. Still, it's enjoyable, and I found myself happy with some of the directions that the characters got to go in, like happy for them. Next up, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. If you remember, or if you watched my book haul, like the only one I've done in the last 5 years or so, or several years, I mean, I bought this first edition book of Dawn by Octavia Butler. And Octavia Butler, what? Huh. There's no E on the cover. Anyway, it's obviously not the best quality ever, but it's the first edition, and I got it for what I thought was a good price, and I'm just so excited. It's obviously not the most beautiful thing in the world, but I think it's a more important point. It's the book that I value most I've gotten this year, or it was actually 2 of them, this one and the second one, but still, I love that I found this at my local bookstore, and it was a good first impression of the book community here in Ithaca, New York, that was there at all. I would say in general, the used bookstore has a great collection of books, which again is a good reflection of the people in the community. Okay, finally. Or almost finally. What books do you have to read for the rest of the year? And obviously it's hard to say, and there's a lot of books I could say, but I have a collection of books here that I decided to highlight for a few reasons. Let's start with 2 books that I pre-ordered on Audible. So I feel pretty confident that when they come out, I'm gonna be excited from the anticipation. We have There Was No Antimedics Division by Quantum, which is a pseudonym for some computer programmer. And he writes a lot of Lovecraftian type stories, and if you look up Lovecraftian genre on Goodreads, he's oftentimes one of the biggest authors, or one of the most read authors. I tried reading one of his books, but it was not on audio, and without the audio, I found myself just not able to get invested, but I really want to, because I think it's from a sort of STEM perspective. He has that, he's approaching the story from a speculative sense. There's an intriguing aspect to that foundation he's coming from that makes me want to really check out one of his books, and I'm so excited to find that it was getting adapted onto audio. And then we have Coup de Grace? Coup de Grace? I'm assuming that's Coup de Grace, but I don't know how to read whatever is that French, by Sophia Adram, who is, I believe, a queer horror. I don't remember why I pre-ordered this. I think it was because it was the winner of long fiction in the Bram Stoker Award for this year. And then I found out it was a good queer horror, and it vibed. A mind-bending and visceral experimental horror about a young man trapped in an infinite Montreal subway station. The thing is, I've definitely looked up books that were liminal, and this might have been one that came up. So maybe it may have been from that, or maybe it was both. I don't remember, because I know I've definitely looked at the horror awards this year. I usually do every year. That's a good way to find some horror fiction I may not have heard of. Looks a lot like it was 2 stars. Either way, I'm excited to read it nonetheless. Beyond that, I want to definitely get some classics in, and Slaughterhouse 5, which is time travel, so it sort of marks that focusing on things that interest me most. And because I want to read one more Steinbeck, but also longer books, The Grapes of Wrath. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a nonfiction, I believe, indigenous book looking at science, I think, or some combination of that, cultural science, indigenous mix. It's a backlist, and it's, I think, kind of long, not, but also, of course, cultural and scientific. So I feel like I may have repeated something there. The point is that highlights some of the things that I am currently intrigued by, continuously intrigued by, interested in pursuing. And then finally, How to Send It to a Dictator by Maria Ressa, for obvious fucking reasons. I may end up reading this month because, it is 4th of July, Independence Month rather. I'm sure I'll read at least one nonfiction this month, or a nonfiction history/politics book for that. It's a good motivation, at least for me. Okay, finally, favorite video or post that I've done so far this year. This is one I think I took from Books on Lala. And obviously, I think it should be obvious, is Booktuber's favorites video. That is because I put so much work into it. I really enjoyed it. More importantly, I got so many thoughtful takeaways from that. Even the books that I found bad or just couldn't give a good rating to, I had such thoughts about them. Like, I had so many things that I wanted to say. And even though that video does not perform well relative to what is good for me, I really enjoyed what I read, and I enjoyed talking about them, even the books that I had to talk badly about. Point is that I love that video. If you haven't checked it out, please do. I'm very happy with it. Other than that, that is my mid-year freakout tag. That's my mid-year check-in. Let me know your thoughts on it. What are your best books, worst books that you've read this year? If there's anything else you're interested from me, any ideas or video ideas you're interested in, feel free to say it below. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go with the flow and keep posting as I feel inspired to. Hope you all have a great day, stay safe, and I'll see you next time on Josh's Bookish Voyage.